Stefan Repin. I'm an ABM slash account-based marketing slash growth expert. I've worked with I work in B2B marketing slash sales. I've been in the market for around let's say 12 years now. I've grown several companies from zero to hero. Particularly, one big success is I've grown a company from 6 to 18 millions in 3 years. Um, and I'm glad to share some knowledge here and then brainstorm here with Brendan.
And what I always find interesting is, especially when you talk about more account-based marketing, I feel over these past years, especially in my world, account-based marketing used to be very popular when there was high ticket items, outbound was very manual. Then I feel with the AI boom, everyone started doing spray and pray. I'm sending 100,000 emails a day, and obviously those open rates sucked and nothing was occurring. So, do you? I guess in your experiences, obviously account-based marketing, I think, is still the key for a lot of B2B enterprises. Why do you think, or at least I haven't experienced much. Why do you think spray and pray became so popular now, especially when the results aren't that good typically? Because I feel everyone I talk to, I'm using Clay, I have 100,000 leads. And then I ask them what their conversion rate is, and they say, we have no sales. So it seems like these executives want these big numbers always. Have you been seeing that more and more, especially with this AI boom where volume almost over quality seems to be more common, at least at the start, until they realize they need to tighten up their ship?
Yeah, I see a lot of people like they call themselves like ABM experts. Meanwhile, all they know is like clay, like putting some clay tables together and then gathering information with the clay agent. And I'm like, that's not expertise. You use some prompts and you don't even do an in-depth research. So the basics of ABM is doing a desk research, in-depth research of who is the DMU, like the buyer committee. How
Mhm,
can what is a play we can use to enter the account? That could be
mhm,
like an account love letter, that could be an executive letter, that could be maybe like a casual meeting at an event, for example, or it could be
mhm,
we had I had a really good sales guy in Asia, and how he bumped into accounts was that he would make friends with the doorman or someone who was working the building, and then he would ask when does so and so have lunch and where, and then he would casually bump into them, and that's how they would make the meeting happen, right? So
mhm,
but I'm not answering your question. Your question would be
mhm,
the answer for your question would be because it's easy. It's very easy to just say, "Oh, I'm doing ABM," and just bump a lot of emails, put a lot of just buy clay credits, put them in, and then do some sort of like personalization, which is F name, hey,
mhm,
first name, how are you, and then bump all these like blast these like thousands of emails, and then call it ABM. And
mhm,
and then I think investors see that and they say, oh, well, we're using AI, check. We're doing ABM on paper, check. Uh, we don't have sales. Oh, that's unchecked. Too bad. Well, we'll have to fire our salespeople. It's okay. We'll get some new ones, right? Uh,
mhm,
and that's what I'm seeing happen. At the same time, and the best organizations, what I've seen account-based marketing work, they don't. A sales rep doesn't take more than, let's say, 15, maximum 20 accounts, and AE doesn't take more
mhm,
than 20 accounts because there is, like if they're considering the ACV, let's say it's 100K a year,
mhm.
right?
Yeah, that I think what you said is so funny because I've worked obviously with a lot of startups, and it's that case. You join an organization, they have no sales. Then you're like, okay, we're going to hire a sales team to do the sales. I need you to use AI, max output. No sales occur in there. Well, it's our sales team's fault. But you don't know if you have product market fit. There was really no strategy initially. It was just the idea that a salesperson would just be able to sell anything with almost no guidance. And I think what you touched on, what you found kind of unique, and I saw on your LinkedIn, you touched upon this a bit, is where I've seen the most successful startups is where they start with founder led sales. You have a founder who no one's gonna be as passionate about your product as the founder typically.
Yeah.
Then kind of build the infrastructure of this is what is working, this is what's not working, and being able to almost be that spokesperson, at least have an example of what worked. Have you found, especially working even in your past experiences, that I'm a big proponent of if there is no founder led sales, so you don't even you need for anything to be successful, there has to be founder led sales before you hire a sales rep. But a lot of founders, especially technical founders, kind of get nervous about this because I don't want to be a sales rep, I don't want to be mean. How have you navigated that where whether maybe founders are afraid of doing sales or feeling that to solve their sales issue, they can just hire sales reps with no playbook, no understanding of who their customers might be? Because I feel that's a common thing we're seeing, especially when startups are scaling so fast.
It's a very good question. So I normally work with a lot of tech people because I work with tech. So think
Mhm,
of it, cybersecurity, any kind of like let's say AI governance now tools, or
mhm,
even like pharma. So they're highly specific tools, right? That founders
mhm,
are building. You have teams behind them. Usually, the founder is a technical guy who learns marketing or sales, or she has a co-founder who does marketing and sales,
mhm,
and they're like, oh, I don't need to deal with this shit. Like, I don't need marketing and sales understanding. I don't need that knowledge, right? And then what happens is that very often they hit some roadblocks, and then the marketing salesperson leaves, and then the tech founder is like, "Oh, I have to figure out sales now," and they end up, micromanaging everyone, and then they end up firing everyone who is in sales because they just don't understand the nature of the business. They think that with
mhm,
code you can automate everything and you can get you can get those results with cloud code. You don't need marketers. You don't need salespeople. I mean,
mhm,
to be honest, fuck that. That doesn't work. Even Anthropic is hiring
mhm,
marketers now, and,
mhm,
and a ton of marketers. So, how do you solve this problem? Well, usually, like there's a lot of education that needs to happen in between. Let's
mhm,
say scaling. So the more again, like the more educated your founder will be, the better it's going to be at sales and
yeah.
marketing. Now, it's very fancy this notion of building in public, which is some sort it's which is a way of um, actually like build founder-led sales. And I think
Mhm,
most people, uh, thanks God, most people who actually are successful they, in B2B, in particular in B2B tech, they sort of like understand
mhm,
marketing sales is important. They put time and
mhm,
money into actually like I wouldn't say maybe money, but like more like time into
mhm,
sales and like building their own brand. Because without their own brand, nobody will care about their product. Like
mhm,
there's a ton of companies who write me every day and they say, "Hey, I have this new tool. Give me like consultation." Yada yada yada, and I'm like, okay, well, okay. I mean, like, I could give you a consultation, but like, maybe like, what are you building here? Why are you building that? Like, I want to see some passion about the product.
mhm.
Otherwise, I can go and build it myself. It's not that hard to build
Yeah.
products nowadays. So, did I answer all your questions you had here?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that the building in public and kind of, I think when people think of founder led sales, if they're scared of it, they think of that cold calling 1,000 people a day idea of sales, where building in public and kind of building that persona can do the exact same thing. Up here in Canada, one of the greatest new startups I've ever spoken to was called Midday Squares, or chocolate company, B2C, but whole founding team had a podcast, were very vocal, posted content. They've built almost a cult like following because of that, because the passion was so amicable and so visible to the fact that they're like, okay, I want to be a part of this business. I want to work for them. I want to buy their product. And that's how they did founder led sales because, like you said, the notion that if I talk about what I'm building, someone's going to steal the idea. The ideas nowadays are so easy to replicate. The strategy behind it, the passion behind it, the relationships behind it are the hardest part. And I think that's always been the case. But now with AI and vibe coding, people are realizing it more and more that like a classic thing. I've worked for so many startups that said, I'm not going to pay for HubSpot, Salesforce, or any of these AI tools. I'm going to build my own agent myself. I'm going to do everything myself. And you can build it. until something goes wrong, and then you realize, oh, I don't. Who do I call for support? What's the backup? Realizing that there's the foundation is really the reason you're paying for this software is the hardening, because it's all fun and games to have it at 80%, but that last 10% will kill you half the time. But what you also said, which is I've been a part of consulting with a lot of businesses, as well as the idea of I get a call saying, hey, we bought this new tool. How do we implement and use it? And the question is, well, what is it for? And they said, well, we know we're doing sales. We need to be AI first. We need to be AI first. We're AI native, agentic. I'm like, these are all buzzwords. What do you want to do? And they said, well, we want to automate the workflow. And then you say, what's the workflow? And I said, we don't have one. And it's like you said, it's the idea that they want tools with no process, and the tools don't really solve anything. You're going to run faster into a wall at this rate. But I think one interesting thing you touched on a little bit here is the idea of buying a tool for everything, hoping they don't have to hire people. Where do you think, or at least within this kind of big AI push, where do you think there is an overestimation of the value of AI, in the sense that people think AI can solve this problem, whether it be marketing specifically, whether it be sales specifically, where AI can help, but there still needs to be a human in the loop? Where do you think there's an overvaluation of AI to solve a real problem that you need a human for at this rate, until AI becomes superhuman and better than all of us?
Yeah, I just want to have I want to have a comment before that.
Mhm,
You mentioned about the
mhm,
founder-led sales. There's this company. It's called Profitwell. Their valuation is around maybe 200 million, and they bought
mhm,
another company. Doesn't matter. They're in fintech. These guys had six podcasts. Six podcasts. I don't mean episodes, but for different type of persona,
mhm,
they had a
mhm,
podcast. And the guy the founder, Patrick Campbell, very
mhm,
successful, and he says
mhm,
basically, look, like for each for the CIO, I'm going to have a podcast. For the CEO of the
mhm,
company, the target, I'm going to have a podcast. For the CFO and so on. So he's going so much like this is so like deeper thinking that I'm having I'm doing this. I'm trying to break my hair like what getting into to launch one podcast with these tech founders, right? And these
mhm,
guys have already six. Anyway, going back to your question, so where do I think that AI is, let's say, overestimated? I would say so. The biggest problem with AI, I see, more of a challenge is that AI breaks. So
mhm,
whatever flow you're going to build with Cloud Code, like I built a flow
mhm,
2 months ago, 2 weeks ago, it
mhm,
completely broke. So I couldn't. It was completely unusable. I did nothing about it. But that's the nature of LLMs, that they break all the time. So
mhm,
you'll always need people to support it and sort of like. mm, think on like about the basics and how you build it, because at some point it's going to break, and when it breaks you'll have to build it from scratch. That's like that's something you'll have to do like 100%.
mhm,
And what it means for you, it means that any automation or semi-automation you're going to build, you'll have to it has to be built by someone who understands the process. So I think in the future probably there's going to be less entry level positions in tech or like marketing, sales, whatever. But there's going to be more senior people. Like there's the people who are going to manage all that. They're going to be more senior. So there's going to be
mhm,
a stronger pressure on hiring senior people who know what the fuck they're doing and how they can use AI to build whatever they want to do. Personally, I'm a big, let's say, fan of this concept, which is human in the loop. So whatever you build with AI, you need to vet it personally, and after like and let AI do its thing, but you
mhm,
need to vet that stuff. And like in terms of where I see that in terms of analysis, people cannot do as
mm,
analysis as AI. So analysis would is there to stay. In terms of what else is good at, I think AI is really good at figuring out patterns. So if you have,
mhm,
let's say, XYZ segments, and you have XYZ things that you want to match a segment with pain points and stuff like that. So creating these tables where you have pain point, segment, and some sort of like signal, and then like all these like complicated things, where you put them all together, I think this will stay with AI, but we have to understand the pain. We have to understand how this whole thing works and what is actual, what is not, because there's going to always be some manipulation, some bullshit coming out from
Mhm.
Clay, from Claude, from any of the LLMs you're using, right? So
Mhm.
you need to understand the pain in the customer, but it can save you time. What other things do I have about AI? Overall, it's really useful, but the problem is that it's unreliable. It's unreliable as fudge. Like, let's say
Mhm.
I have a I had a let's say a bot who was building
Mhm.
banners for me, and it was all okay. And then recently, like last week, I wanted to create like a new banner. It all went
Mhm.
bananas, completely bananas, and I deleted all. I had to delete all the instructions, all the prompts for it. Still was delivering shit. So it's in this case, I'm like, do I go then to a human designer then to get the
Mhm.
job done? So sort of like I don't like the unreliability of AI. To be honest with you,
Mhm.
I don't like that at all.
Mhm. And I've seen it more and more similar to what you're saying is you'll build something for a very specific use case. It'll kind of work, and then you try to fully automate something, and then the quality either slips just due to the fact that now you're trying to do too many things with it, and it wasn't built properly, or again, classic thing, especially when there might not be a process in place, you don't really know what output you're expecting. And I've seen this a lot more with outbound sales, where they're okay, we're going to use Claude, OpenAI, we're going to throw an API key in, and we're going to say, hey, personalize this email. And, you know, that sounds great. It starts getting very personal. It's like, hi, Brendan, reaching out because X, Y, and Z. I saw I did X, Y, and Z. But after a while, and I've seen this so many times, if you're not good at prompting, or you don't know what the value prop is, it just starts making stuff hallucinating, and or the emails are just way too creepy, where it starts just reading your background. Hey, Brendan, I know you had a kid recently, and you're like, okay, calm. Now the AI is getting too personalized, and I think this is an interesting thing where we're seeing more and more that even on sales, like writing content, not even on the content side, there there is still a value in first understanding what your value prop is and positioning it, but most importantly, having a level of creativity that's a little bit different. Like you touched on, finding clients, going to the doorman, asking them where are they eating. That is something where you need the human, almost human in the loop creativity to do that, because sending them more personalized email just doesn't work. And one interesting thing I've been seeing more and more is, and this always happens. When I was early in my career, I was told cold calling is dead. No one cold calls anymore. Now cold calling is on the rise. And then emails were the big thing. Now everyone's saying, well, you can't send emails anymore. No one opens emails. And that's never, I've still had success with emails. So it's always this like cyclical thing.
Hmm.
Do you find now that with how much content can be generated with AI, you can send, as we said before, hundreds of emails, thousands of emails, that how do you start standing out? And you've touched on this a little bit, when their inboxes are now almost flooded and email seems to be less and less engaged, whether this be a different and I think you touched on, podcast has been a successful way. How have you not demystified this, but how have you been able to get in contact with people when it feels like AI agents are calling people every day now, where there's almost too much information being sent to people?
Yeah, I think everyone's flooded with emails, which it's not ideal. Because everyone's flooded with emails, like you're more likely to ignore all digital channels and then sort of status quo to the non-digital channels. In that case,
Hmm.
that could be traditional direct mail, traditional meetings. Meetings and communities are having a freaking blast right now, a freaking blast. Like anyone who's built a mode as a community mode, their sales are growing very, very tough, like immensely. So
Hmm.
think of it like this way: if you work with the influencers, continue working with influencers, because that's any sort of relationship that a person has with another person, that will continue delivering. And that's why now I'm seeing let's say I saw a recent research. 30% of the budgets this year are going to be spent on AI. Not AI, sorry, influencer
Mhm.
marketing. And I believe the
Hmm.
next year is not gonna it's not gonna decrease. We're gonna see 40-45%
Yeah.
budget spent on yeah, because like nobody believes there is too much noise. AI ads don't, ads you can put you can it's very easy not to make an ad, and like put that ad on, and in the ad you're gonna have some AI model. I personally don't. I personally when I see AI videos I like to go through, because unless they're like super funny, or which doesn't happen very often,
Mhm.
because I want to see people want to see a higher effort, so I want to see other people. I cannot trust AI because first of all, because I
Mhm.
know how faulty it is in terms of like delivering any sort of content for me. So events are having a blast. So I've been working
Mm.
with the team recently, in fintech, and then we're seeing prices increase for events exponentially. People
Mm.
still want to talk to other people, and partner. Okay, interesting trend. I'm seeing partner channels soar. So let's say if you want to get to a brand and to a company, to an account, you
Mhm.
cannot sell into the account directly, then you go through a partner, and everyone's trying to partner with other people who do actually have a relationship with other company, and that's why we've had, and we're still seeing a lot of MAs. We will still see a lot of merger and
Mhm.
acquisitions because of that relationship, which you cannot scale with more ads, more outreach. It just
Mhm.
exists there, so it's much easier. But actually, it's economically much more convenient just to do an MA,
Mhm.
buy the relationship and with that company, and then sort of like on board. And you know, p- partnerships are having a blast nowadays as well. Um,
Mhm. What and I think that's I mean, since the beginning of time, relationships, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And that's always been the case because people want to, like you said, people want to speak to people. What I hate about this is a more of a me problem. When I was a kid, I was forced to play golf because growing up, my dad said, you need to play golf. Everyone plays golf. Then in like the 2010s, golf wasn't as popular because this is like the rise of like virtual meetings. Now I've been invited to no golf meetings probably for first 15 years of my career. I'm getting invited to golf, pickleball, these social outings. Now I'm like, damn it, my dad was right. I have to play golf because, like you said, it's there's so many emails going out. So now, like the traditional sales, let's have a go to an event, let's kind of meet in person, do these more personalized experiences are much more popular because at least at this point, there's no robots you're sending to golf meetings. It's two people sitting down for 3 hours having a conversation. And so I've been seeing more of the rise of these. Well, when I was growing up, I think like the traditional sales thing where I take someone to a dinner, take someone to a golf game, or like, go play golf is more and more popular just to build that relationship. And I've also seen a lot is the rise of this partnership thing where it's okay, you have an existing relationship. Now we're not paying for access, but whether it be an M&A or, hey, let's work together. You have your customers, we have my customers. There is some loyalty between the brand and the individual. Let's see if we can cross sell. And more and more, we're seeing more and more of that. But I mean, I'm happy pickleball is getting more popular. I've been to one pickleball. It was a networking pickleball event that had like some conference elements, which was great. A little bit of padel as well. Been really enjoying that. But it's interesting how kind of when everything's full circle. Like we said before, emails were popular, then they're not, then there are again, and then when there's wherever there's a lot of noise, you go where there's no noise, and there's people now want to have that human connection again. So these in-person meetings are becoming, I don't say much easier to get, but much more open to having a meeting in person rather than another virtual call or another spam of email bots. So that's kind of an interesting shift. How it's kind of going back to that traditional in-person networking or conferencing, which was dying out a bit, at least in my view, over these like the early years before AI, because there's too many in-person meetings. Now there's none. No one ever wants to meet in person anymore. So it's an interesting shift in that dynamic. Have you seen? Obviously, you know the speed's impressive. If you know what you're doing, all these tools can be very quick and accessible. And I found one thing that's very interesting, and just because you've done this yourself, I love your view on this. Is so when I started, not knowing anything in this, not really being any development experience, I got into Clay, and then I was like, "Wow, this tool is amazing! I can do so many things."
Mm-hmm.
Then I talked to an engineer, and they say, and this is for all tools, "Why are you doing it yourself? I can build it myself for cheaper. I can build it myself for cheaper." And then eventually you do that and it breaks. How, when you're evaluating these tools, how do you evaluate like a tool to buy a new tool? I mean, every damn day there's a new tool. How do you evaluate when it's worth getting a tool versus trying to build the workflow or the tool almost on your own, whether it be through Claude Code to build a workflow? How do you evaluate building versus buying? Because I feel every day there's a tool for almost anything, but sometimes maybe it's cheaper just to try to spin it up and personalize it yourself because it's so easy to vibe code a lot of these things.
Well, that's a very interesting question. Um, how would I usually evaluate? So first of all, what I use, so I have what make.com and I10. Very simple automations there. Cloud
Mhm,
Code. Cloud Code I use because it helps me with the projects are great. I like that. I
mhm,
personally don't like Gemini. I use ChatGPT for personal stuff a lot, just because it has a lot of context. Um,
mhm,
why? How do I evaluate? And so, how do I evaluate whether I want to build or I want to buy? To be honest with you, I try to stay very humble on tools. I don't. I have like maybe 2 3 tools that I use quite often, and like you know, for example, I use a LinkedIn tool, a LinkedIn like whatever, like you can call it automation
mhm,
or something like that.
mhm,
Then I use and it also has analytics in it, so I use a tool for web conversations, web events, for example,
mhm,
Restream. So would I build a tool or no? So I'll actually lead with an example. So
mhm,
um, nowadays people think of tools as like, oh, I have a spreadsheet, and then I'm gonna code, and then you go and you code, and then what you get is like you get a page with check marks, and it's like I've coded
mhm,
the tool, right? And then when you're like, okay, I'm gonna put this into GitHub, and then I can like send it to my colleagues so they can, we could do a
mhm,
playbook out of it. You figure out that been building features on top of each other, and then you don't have the right architecture, so it cannot be scalable. You have to build from scratch, right? And my question is, like you wasted like it's great that people want to play with AI, but you need to think you got to start with a goal, with an end in mind. Like, is it maybe easier to just like pay that $30 or $50 or $100 a month and not fudging bother with all the support, all the you know getting that product live, all the bugs you're gonna have, it's gonna break. I just don't see myself like doing all of that. I know people are different. Some people will be like,
mhm,
especially the techies, they're like, oh no, f that, I'm gonna go and build my own CRM. Okay, they're gonna build their own CRM, and then instead of creating a founder-led sales or like getting on a sales call, they'll be supporting their built CRM, right? But it's like, oh, but I've saved $100 for the company. Who cares? Who cares? You're working on goals that do not matter
mhm,
instead of working on goals that do matter, do move the needle, right? So my thinking is it worth my time to actually build this tool, or I'd rather just go somewhere and I I use whatever I have and I adapt my process to the tool. Uh,
mhm,
Otherwise, it's just like, I mean, it's all hype. There's a lot of hype about like, oh, I'm a builder. I built my dashboard with AI. I'm a coder. I consider myself a coder, but that's temporary. Things are going to change.
mhm. And I've seen that so many times where instead of paying, I talk to them, instead of paying, $30 a month for N8N, they're like, well, I'm going to build my own workflow integration. I'm going to get all the API docs, do it myself. All weekend they're spending doing this. Your salary's well over 100,000 a year. You spent 40 hours working on this to save $20. See, pay the $20, people. I think it's on this thing where it's exciting to build. You're like, wow. But then there's, you said, if you don't understand the first principles, there's not scalable, and it's that issue. But I think it's one of those interesting things where it's like anything. It's like anything in life where if you know a little bit, if you know a little bit too much, it's almost dangerous because I can use Claude Code. I'm pretty good with this vibe coding thing. I know a little bit about everything, so I can it's everything. Everything is possible, and then it gets dangerous because once you have to pressure test it or you have it scalable, it's such a big challenge. So I've been in that role many times where I'm like, I can just why am I going to pay $50 for this? I can do it myself. And then you realize, oh, it's that peace of mind you forget about when something breaks me and calls at midnight saying, hey, the workflow you built doesn't work. Why is that? And then you're like, I don't know. It's a black box. I did it in Lovable. I did it in Claude Code. I actually have no idea why it doesn't work. And you spend more time fixing it than it does helping. So it's a unique challenge. I mean, we see the same thing with, at least it's different with the Olympics now. Like I don't really say, well, why am I not on the Olympics? Because I can't do any of the things they're doing. It's very visible and easy to see. Where software, it's almost hard to see what's behind the, on the back end to make it, X amount of thousands a month on the tool because it's hard to understand the thought process behind it. But yeah, that's it's always an interesting challenge.
Actually, that's very interesting. What you just said. Maybe that's the marketing's role is to uncover what the hell is behind all that backend process that's happening, all the thinking that's happening
Mhm,
behind a certain tool, and explain, hey, this is how we're actually building our freaking backend. So if you smart ass want to build something like that, you should
mhm,
consider this, and then smart ass will consider that, and then they will end up never building such a tool because the
mhm,
architecture is complex. They don't take into consideration. You forgot about it. There is one thing which is very common. All these vibe tools, all these tools are very easily getting hacked. The cybersecurity is having a
mhm,
blast. They're growing as crazy just because there is a ton of vibe tools. None of them
mhm,
are SOC, SOC 2 compliant. They're not compliant with anything.
mhm,
And then you introduce a customer's data in there, and then it gets lost. You go, and then it's freaking crazy. And that's one thing that a lot of these vibe coders do not understand, or at least do not take into consideration the safety of all of this. You're paying for safety as well. In the end, it's like same
mhm,
like paying taxes. You think of, oh, I pay taxes, these greedy bastards. But like, okay, what about the police? What about the firefighters? What about like medical stuff, right? When you get that, when you need that, well, you get it, right? And that's the
mhm.
price of paying taxes. The same is here, right? Like there is a machine behind it, and there is a reason why this costs this much.
To end off here, if people were interested in learning kind of more about what you do, your story, kind of work with you, what's the best way to get in contact, reach out to you? Because obviously you have a lot of great ideas on this matter. And again, being in the industry, kind of speaking through your experiences, there's a lot, I feel a lot of scale ups and founders could learn from your expertise, especially when it comes to trying to build out that system and that engine as they scale from that, maybe series A to that series B or that, that 7 figure to that 8 figure thing. How do people get in contact and learn more about kind of the work you do?
Cool. They can find me on LinkedIn. So my name is STFAN. My last name is Repin, Stefan Repin. Find me on LinkedIn. Drop me a message. I'm very friendly. Like we're gonna have a coffee, a digital coffee, and we'll figure out how we can help you grow this thing called Tech. And Or you can visit my website luckboosters.com, luckboostrs.com. It's also a way to find out more about me and then book a session with me. It's all free.